Welcome back to Nourishing Maine. I'm Mary Kate Rennie.
And I'm Marge Kilkelly, and we're here at Dragonfly Cove Farm in Dresden, Maine. And who would have believed that when we started talking about this, that we would be wrapping up season 1?
I know, end of the year, and we've got so much to talk about. We had so many great guests. We cooked a lot of food. I learned a ton of things. We really did have a good time.
And we ate really well.
And we're going to eat better next year.
Absolutely.
I mean, the ideas are coming on strong, and we've got lots of other people going to come and join us. But we really do want to delve into, why Nourishing Maine and why, what it means to each of us, and how important it is to talk about what makes us happy and what nourishes our hearts and souls. So Marge came up with the name, so we'd love to hear.
It was interesting when we first started talking about this, and the importance of it being place-based. Mm-hmm. That Maine is really important to us, mm-hmm. And nourishing is important. And nourishing it's certainly about food, mm-hmm. obviously, but it's so much more than that.
It is. The work we both have done in our careers and going forward too, that nourished us in completely different ways and fed us in different ways, but we got to meet a lot of different folks. And as you'll see in some of the recaps of this season, the people that we had come on, they have, political careers and teaching careers, and we learned so much around food and the table and the love of that space that we share with everybody.
And what is more rural Maine in particular than being in the kitchen and having a conversation while you're cooking? I mean,
True.
That's what a lot of us grew up with, and that's what we really wanted to share, was that experience of welcoming you into our kitchen and sharing our kitchen, and hopefully providing you with some opportunities to try some things that maybe you haven't tried before. Mm-hmm. That's what Mary Kate and I are hoping to do as well with this, is to provide people with an opportunity to try something they maybe haven't tried before, to experiment, and to feel that it's a really good thing for them to be doing. We talk a lot about cooking it's about recipes, sort of. But it's more about having the experience when you're stirring something and it's ready. It's not because someone said stir it 40 times.
Mm-hmm. And we've all, I'll speak for myself. Like, that's where I started, was, really following directions, especially with cooking, not baking, because you do have to follow those directions. But you get comfortable in the kitchen, you get comfortable with your equipment, you get a little daring because you don't have one of the ingredients, but I think that might work as a substitute. And that whole feeling of being comfortable in the kitchen and then having a successful outcome is just the best.
And as a matter of fact, I've even thought about making this recipe with just onions.
That's called pickled onions.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. We'll do that next time.
I wonder if they call them bread and butter pickled onions. I don't know.
I don't either.
Maybe we could do that.
We could, or we could make up our own.
That'll be our next riff. I think the other piece that's important about learning something is when you're learning it, you're bound to make mistakes. Mm-hmm. And that's perfectly fine. And I think the other piece that I'd really like to share is that so many times we've had dinner with something that I've experimented with, and we've made the decision that we're just not going to go there again. And that's okay.
Mm-hmm, it is.
And sometimes it even means going over town for pizza. I mean,
it's true. And
bad.
A shared goal of Nourishing Maine for sure is just that. Yeah. It's supposed to be fun, accessible, affordable. And if you do make a mistake, there is, and you've heard us use the word forgiving a multitude of times in our different episodes, because it has to be, or it can't be too fussy.
This is another one of the recipes that is just very forgiving and very flexible.
1.5. I bet this is pretty forgiving too. But
it's very forgiving. There you go. That is the nice part about this. It's very forgiving.
It is forgiving.
All of these items on your Thanksgiving table are pretty forgiving when you've got to put so many different items on your table.
And one of the things that has been, I think, the most fun is what we have learned from other people.
For sure.
And there are lots of shows that focus on incredibly well-trained cooks and chefs and
ingredients
and all of the wonderful things that they're doing. But we really wanted to focus on local, home cooking heroes, the people that every day are cooking dinner for you.
Yeah, and getting to know our local heroes, as we call them.
Yeah.
You know, a lot of folks
Our home cooking heroes.
Our home cooking heroes. A lot of folks know Paul from a lifelong career of service, but who knew that he's also, a miracle worker in the kitchen?
One of the things I talked about was the person that if you invite them over to your house for a potluck, you don't just invite them, you say, oh, and you need to bring your. And for me, that's especially my Aunt Faye. It was, and you need to bring your baked macaroni and cheese. And I think those kinds of recipes are really important.
And we really touched on that in the Christmas episode, I think, because we all know those people, neighbors, friends, associates at work, who I hope they bring their fudge. I hope they bring their crab dip. I hope. So those are a gift, and it's so satisfying to be able to bring those forward and show people how to do it. Yeah.
And one of our first guests was Paul Lehman.
It's true.
And it was so wonderful to see him in an apron.
True.
My time in the legislature, I knew you as the fire chief, the go-to person for emergency information. And then all of a sudden, I see a Facebook post that's Paul Lehman cooking again. I meant, again?
Yeah.
Really? So this is like a whole transition for you.
Well, I started at the Anchor Inn in the mid-'60s, working for my grandparents, doing dishes, lobsters. And so restaurants was always in my life. I went away to school to become a marine biologist and worked at the Darling Center in the 70s as a cook, not as a marine biologist. And so I was there for 18 years. And so off and on, I've earned a living cooking for 45 years. During that time, I got elected fire chief for the town of Bristol.
Sure.
And all of a sudden it came to me that I can't do both jobs at once.
And his words of wisdom about the importance of food were just really important.
And I remembered at the Downs, we'd bring people from all over the world, and there would be people out there with their countries at war with each other. And I watched them come in, shy at first, but they would sit and eat. So you see people whose countries are at war become the best of friends. And I thought, something, instead of me trying to get involved with politics, people have been brought together and wars have been solved by people breaking bread together.
Oh, that's exactly what Nourishing Maine's about.
And Tim Hobbs.
I know.
And Tim, I've known Tim for so long when he was the deputy director of the Maine Potato Board. And it was so much fun to have him here. He gets so excited about potatoes and cooking potatoes.
I learned so much about potatoes. You just take it for granted that there's only one or two types, but Maine has a lot to be proud of.
I think Maine is probably the 8th producer of fall potatoes in the state, in the country. So it's still a pretty significant industry. It's amazing how many people around the country, when you go and you visit, and we're from Maine, well, you have lobsters, and yeah, we have. But I was in potato industry, so when you say potatoes, they're like, they grow potatoes in Maine? But we try to educate them.
We do, and that's what we're all about.
I know
Thing to be
that.
proud
Awesome.
of. And Needham's, making candy with Diane was really fun, because candy making can be intimidating. Temperature and tempering and all of those things. So that was really a good time.
So now that we've got the chocolate going, there's another amazing secret ingredient in Needham's, and what's
Can I
that?
pick them up? This is potato, and that's why it's such a nice Maine candy, because potato is a big part of it.
And Diane loves to teach, and she had a great time making sure that we were good students.
Well, that's true.
Diana has taught both of us to make Needham's, and we're here for a refresher course because we want to make sure this Christmas we get them absolutely right. And it was so much fun last year. Thank you for joining us.
Do you want her to take a turn?
Yes.
Yeah, I thought maybe. And I can too if you want. I just think it's fun telling you guys what to do.
So again, it's by feel and sight. It's not necessarily a time.
No. The big deal is to really get it mixed.
There's a lot of stirring in that episode.
There was a lot of stirring in that episode.
But it mattered.
It
right?
does matter. It does matter.
And kids can do that part for us.
And kids can do that part.
Yeah.
Again, that goes back to the the whole issue of flexibility. That there are so many of the recipes that we worked on that are important for to share with your family, because that's how those traditions move down.
I know. And speaking of traditions, our last guest was Kevin Kelly, and we did all things lobster for the New Year episode.
Kevin Kelly, who works with the Maine Lobstermen's Association and on the Save the Maine Lobstermen campaign, and the Director of Advancement, and we are delighted to have you here.
Thanks for inviting me.
Yeah, welcome, Kevin.
You're absolutely, and you forgot one important point. The son of a lobsterman.
Oh, there we go.
There you go.
Yeah, what a robust, wonderful group of guests.
It was, and I really do think that, in terms of Kevin's recipes as well, that, it's so important to think about what we do grow in Maine, what we have in Maine, and how we as consumers can support those industries and support our neighbors and support the communities, whether it's the communities in Aroostook County or other counties that are growing potatoes, or the coastal communities that are dependent on fishing, lobster fishing as well as other fishing. That's an important role that we play.
Well, it's true, and the apples, the potatoes, the lobsters, the amazing supply and diversity of vegetables.
Gorgeous
Isn't that
fall
pretty?
color. It's like embracing everything fall.
It was a really fun part of Nourishing Maine that I really didn't think was going to be so profound for me.
I think the other part, from a consumer perspective, is the careful shopping. Whether you're shopping at, farmer's market, it's one thing. You know that those things were grown here. But when you're shopping at the supermarket, which all of us do, to really search out those items that have been grown in Maine. And frankly, if you don't find them, why not ask? Why don't you have Maine apples, or why don't And really encourage, I think, the grocery retailers to be doing more of that. Although many of them are doing a really good job.
Doing a good job. But to your point, our local farmers, I think both of us belong to a CSA. You can also shop around the different farms as well.
And I think that the resources are out there. The Maine Department of Agriculture has a really wonderful website where you can look up farms and farmers markets. There's the Maine Farmers Market Federation. They're on Facebook as well as having a website. So there are lots of places where you can look.
Yeah, and there's and it's winter right now. I mean, there are winter farmers markets. I think there's one in Brunswick and there's one in Bath, I believe.
CSA, maybe we haven't talked about what a CSA is. CSA stands for Community Supported Agriculture, where you pay in advance, and in exchange, in some cases you get a set amount of product each week or each month. In others, you go to a farm stand or the farmer's market and purchase the items that you want. But either way, it's a wonderful way to support agriculture because it provides funding up front. So when farmers are, buying chickens or when they're buying seed, they have the resources to do that.
Right.
So.
When they're not, getting the income from the summer bounty, by paying your membership fee, they then have some cash to buy the seeds to do the work needed for those summer baskets and things.
And there are a lot of winter CSAs.
There are, and you're bound to get some vegetable that you've not heard of, and there's usually a recipe attached.
And talking about recipes.
I mean,
and we do use
we
them.
do pour over older recipes because it is, in fact, very fun to see where they've come and how we've adapted. So we do use those as rough guides.
Especially if you're living in a rural area, there are going to be times when you are just not going to find a particular item. And when you can't find it, the first reaction a lot of folks have is, well, I can't make that recipe.
That's true.
And that's terrible.
It is terrible. And it's not true necessarily.
No.
You brought this recipe. I can't wait.
There is no recipe.
Oh, really?
There's no written recipe, as far as I know.
There you go.
Yep. So it's just.
Then you can do no wrong.
You can't.
And neither can we, Marge. That's right.
I love those kinds of things.
Those kinds of recipes.
We like that sort of flexibility.
Yeah.
By looking at recipes, by reading them, not just to make it, but to read those recipes in a way that is, you know, part of your education in cookery, you're then able to figure out, well, you know, I've seen 5 recipes where these 2 items are together. That must work.
True. It's like Marge and I, who read cookbooks or have a stack of them on our nightstand, should I say. You know, you can make adjustments to recipes most often, and we're going to do that today. You can also say to yourself, am I going to miss the celery?
Yeah.
You know, like you got to wonder, you know, if it's, you know, especially in a soup or a pot roast with, you know, all those veggies or whatever you're making, and you don't want to go to town to get whatever it is, unless it's the key ingredient. Most often you can substitute, and we do go into that a little bit.
We do. I have a couple walnuts
Sounds good.
and put in here as well. Yeah.
And of course you could use
And they're so
pecans.
good toys. You could use sunflower seeds.
You could.
You could, you know, you
Pumpkin
can use
seeds.
pumpkin
I bet.
seeds.
Yep. And I have a friend who uses pear in here sometimes.
yep.
You can mix and match.
And so, you know, we want to find ways to use what we have in store. And I think one of the emails that we got early on in the programs that I loved was from a friend of mine who said, the things that you made, I have everything in my cupboard to make that, and I can do that. And that's exactly what part of our message is you can do it. And it's, you know, it really is a lot about using what you have on hand and finding ways to be creative with it.
And flexible.
Thanksgiving really is easy, and yes, you can do it. And it's a way to sort of uplift some of the things you might do regularly, like adding maple syrup to carrots. You don't do that every day probably, or having a turkey that's stuffed with wonderful herbs or stuffing. But it's not hard. It's just something to think through. And again, the most important part is enjoying the time that you've got with family and friends.
We do make it easy to just build a simple recipe. You know, our Thanksgiving episode was all about, yes, you can. It's, you know, it seems intimidating when you look at the whole table and all the people around it, but when you start at the beginning and just methodically do it. So yeah, building the recipe, we talk about that too.
And one of the things that just worked out so incredibly well, especially for the Thanksgiving show, was that we had already made pickles, so the pickles were done. We had made mashed potatoes, so the potato was done. And we had made apple crisp. And so for people who didn't dare make an apple pie, the apple crisp was there. And so, you know, just if you break it down into those pieces.
And it's that main resourcefulness. What do I have in my pantry? All of those things that tie together that lifts a little bit of the anxiety of starting something brand new for the first time.
And it's really funny, I think, about Thanksgiving dinner, because there's something about just saying, I need to cook a Thanksgiving dinner that just in and of itself brings on this sense of, oh my God. And, you know, again, our effort was to really break it down into pieces. You can do it. And
My
it's going to be
young
fun.
nephew in California watched the show, and he'd never done Thanksgiving dinner, and he did his first turkey.
Oh, yay.
From our guidance.
Yay.
yes. So that was the whole goal. Was
And
making
cranberry
things.
sauce. What could be easier?
Except people really like the cranberry sauce with the ridges. We'll have to say.
We'll have to figure out a way.
It was the winner at my table, but that's okay. We'll have to keep educating. That's all there is to it.
So Joe's Way.
I know. It dives. Joe's Way has been such a fun, creative way to do even more helpful hints. But Joe has many of them.
And I know that there's a Joe way of dealing with that.
Welcome to the Joe Way. I also have another Joe Way. Welcome to Joe's Way. Once again, this is the Joe Way. I'm Joe, by the way. Welcome to Joe's Way. We're celebrating the lobster today. This is a non-traditional tradition. Take the label off, cut the bottom out. Gravy is probably one of the best ingredients you can put on food. I could eat them all day long, every day in fact. Scoop it up, pour it in. You can actually seal it while it's right in the can. I myself prefer using an apple corer. This is really difficult. And then you shake it and put it on a board and just roll it out with a rolling pin. When you put it into the pan, you can see that they overlap. My way is the better way. Very palpable. And that's the Joe way. And that's the Joe way. And that's the Joe way. Happy holidays. With a big smile. And that's the Joe way. And that's the Joe way. Have a good day. Again, that's the Joe way. And that's the Joe way. Have a happy new year.
When we first started talking about the show, I started thinking about the things that he does, and I go like, whoa, that's pretty cool. Or the gravy. Oh my God. I mean, I've made lumpy gravy forever, and it's like, Joe's way is not to have lumpy gravy. And the lobster, and getting the last bit of meat out of those lobster legs.
So tight. I do feel like when I have a lobster that I do make a broth after with my shells, but I do feel like I waste some of the meat.
Yeah.
And as Joe said, you can get a whole extra lobster roll if you do it right. And he is right.
So that's been really fun. It's been, I think, a real opportunity to share tips and tricks that maybe people haven't thought about. The squash. A friend of ours, her 2 kids so wanted to make the squash that they reviewed the show so that they could figure out exactly how to pull that squash and how to pull the top off that squash and make it all work. And so another way that kids get involved.
Well, and we do feature a lot of recipes and guests and procedures and stuff where kids could definitely help. The mashed potatoes, who doesn't love a mashed potato? But also, the candy making and all of that. So that was a good part of the shows as well.
This would be a fun thing to do with kids.
Yeah, because they like to mix.
Yeah. And I mean,
That's another piece right there.
and we keep talking about, quick and easy Christmas presents, and, to be able to spend an afternoon with kids and make these and then, package them and give them to folks for Christmas presents. One of the things that I've learned in this whole process is that the magic of television, we hear that term all the time, and I finally figured out that basically we are the magic of television.
I have to take a second here because I have to get the maple syrup. The magic of TV.
It's on the stove.
It's on the stove.
Through the magic of television.
I'll put it up here.
That's a good idea.
We take this and we put it in the oven. We wait for it to get done. And then we take it out of the oven, and you'll see the difference an hour makes.
Or our film crew is the magic of television.
But it's been really fun just thinking about how to make these items work for people, how to show them how to do it, how to show them the finished product, and it's been a real learning for me as well in terms of what goes into it, because again, sticking to a recipe is not my forte.
Right, and it was kind of by accident, I think, because we do want to make it easy enough and not too long to cook what it is that we're presenting on any episode, right, Marge? Yeah. And so for us to really have to pull that together and then implement it and make it work, it's been successful at the end, and it hasn't been, we're not hiding anything behind that magic of television, like steps and things like that.
No, we stirred a lot of Needhams.
We did. That's no
Long
joke.
time. So as we wrap up season 1, that means we're headed into season 2.
It's true. And that's 2024. We're going to be getting into similar recipes and similar ideas, have a lot of interesting guests, I'm looking forward to that. I think we'll get into the seasonality. We did get into that a little bit in our first episode. Pickles, we started this Nourishing Maine when, cucumbers were out and plentiful, and that's why we dove into that. And then in fall, we did the apples and then the potatoes. And so we're really looking forward to the spring aspect of things because there's so much.
I'm really excited about a couple of shows that we've got coming up that really, I think, can help people get through winter, help them maybe even enjoy winter a little bit. We have a whole show about oatmeal. I know. Imagine that.
I think it's exciting. And we didn't even do oatmeal cookies.
I know.
So there's more to come.
But we did, and we're not gonna give too much away here, but we did do oatmeal as a combination of maybe breakfast and dessert. And you're going to have to watch that one to see what that's all about.
Yeah, there's more to oatmeal than
There's
meets the
more
eye.
to oatmeal than meets the eye, or the oat, or whatever, yes.
It's true.
And the other one, we had John Piatti here.
Yes.
John, who is now the president of American Farmland Trust. And one of the themes for American Farmland Trust is no farms, no food. And what better place to have that conversation than in a farm kitchen cooking food?
And we used a lot of Maine vegetables, winter vegetables that are plentiful and easy to get. And it was a delicious recipe that, again, you'll have to tune in to visit with John and Marge and I and really talk about a lot of great policy coming up or existing as we speak.
And Maine beans.
Yeah,
Maine dried beans.
Even Maine dried beans, locally. Right?
And I think that's a good point too. I mean, we're talking about cooking and we're talking about the industries, but we also have an opportunity to sort of do something that I desperately love, and that's talk about policy. And it's really policy that keeps all of this going. If we're not aware of protecting farmland, if we're not aware of protecting the resource of lobsters or the lobster fishery, even more than lobsters. The lobstermen are doing a good job on that. Or making sure that we are supporting as consumers the those industries in Maine. Then we're going to lose that.
Right, and that's the goal of Nourishing Maine. Is policy feels very out there, not relatable. We do care about our local Maine economy and industry, but by bringing that discussion to the kitchen table and to the kitchen, where we're actually using the product that they're growing and catching. I mean, that's one of my favorite aspects of this show is tying those things together and making it very relatable and why it's important to Maine and to us.
There used to be a sign that I had once that said, "No matter where I have my guests, they seem to love my kitchen best."
Oh, it's true.
And it's where we all hang out.
And I used to, at holiday or summer parties even, I used to want to shoo people out, as you're finishing up those last, and then I just gave up. Just be ready because they all want to be around the island and they want to know what I'm doing and they want to know what I'm thinking about that. And so that is, again, the magic of your kitchen and discussion and food, opening that up.
And that's the fun of the kitchen.
I know.
Yeah.
It is very
fun. And we love our kitchen. It's been a fun time.
It has.
And if it wasn't fun, it wouldn't be worth doing. But it also has been so satisfying to hear from people that have watched it, who feel good about it. And it's really funny. We've heard from people who are in Maine. We've heard from people who want to be in Maine. We've heard from people who used to be in Maine. And all of those people are the folks that seem to appreciate what it is that we have to offer.
Yeah, and the goal really, besides just, enjoying really good food was, just to educate folks, all of us, each other and people across the country about Maine, but also about how easy it is to cook wherever you are. You just have to be open to that and that every space has something special for it. So, that's who we're cooking for, is for all of you and for people who are very curious about Maine by itself, but also how you use the products, who the people are. That's what's so nourishing about living in this state is the wonderful people, incredible food,
Absolutely.
the places, and being able to share it with everybody who appreciates it as well.
Thank you so much for joining us for Nourishing Maine. As you can tell from our conversation and the clips that you've seen, we are passionate about food, our friends, feast and family. And we are so grateful for everyone who has provided us with great feedback, who's tried the recipes, and who have just been there to support us. And we really are looking forward to having you join us in season 2 in 2024.
I can't believe it. So I'm Mary Kate Rennie.
And I'm Marge Kilkelly.
And we'll see you next year on
Nourishing
Maine.
Maine.